We're getting there. Call to order the St. Joseph City Council meeting of Monday, June 7th. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item 2, public comments. Anybody wishing to address the council not related to street assessments? Come on to the podium and, okay. No one come forward. We'll look at item 3, approval of the agenda.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and second to approve the agenda. Any changes or additions? None? Motion and second to approve the agenda. All those in favor signify by aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries. Item 4, consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second on the consent agenda. Any issues or concerns, councilors? All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Item 5, public hearing for the MS4 annual. This, Randy or you?
Yeah, I can take that
Okay.
on. Yeah, so the National Pollution Discharge Elimination System, also known as NPDES, Phase 2 program, it's a federally mandated program that was established by the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency. Essentially, the city of St. Joseph is considered an MS4, which is a municipal separate stormwater sewer system. And so with that, with the permit that we're required to have, we are to incorporate 6 minimum control measures for stormwater pollution prevention. And those include public education and outreach, public participation, illicit discharge detection and elimination, construction site runoff control, post-construction runoff control, and pollution prevention. We are required to submit an annual report to the MPCA, and we outline the activities that we take. And so within your packet is that annual MS4 report that we submit to the MPCA, and part of it, we have to have a public hearing on that to take public input. So a public hearing is required tonight, and again, to take that input, but no action by the council is needed, except for to open that public hearing.
Okay, with that being said, we'll open the public hearing on MS4 annual report. Is that what we're opening the public hearing for?
Correct.
Comments on that? Comments on that? Anybody wishing to address the public on MS4 annual report, Public Works, please step to the podium. And see no one coming forward. We're gonna close the public hearing, and we move on then to next item. We opened and closed, nobody came. Item 6, public assessment hearing, 2021 street improvements.
Yeah, so before Bill Zeidin and Randy Sabart present the 2021 street and utility improvements, I just make note a public hearing is required this evening for the proposed improvements. Back in December, you held a hearing on the proposed projects, the merits of those, and then tonight's purpose is for the assessments. Within your packet are notices of objection, so those will be made a part of the public record.
Randy, do we normally do a presentation, or do we include that as part of the public hearing?
So we'll do that as a brief presentation before the public hearing, and
Very
then you
good.
can open up for public testimony.
Very good, thank you, Randy.
With that, I'm Randy Sabart, city engineer. With me this evening is Bill Zeidin, project engineer. We have a brief presentation for you this evening. This is what we refer to as the special assessment hearing. If you were here in December, you may recall I mentioned the state requires that cities that conduct a public improvement under the Chapter 429 statutes that we conduct 2 public hearings. The first one that was conducted in December, it discusses or reveals the merits of a project. The city presents a project, and the purpose of that meeting is, if you would, to debate the merits of the project. The second public hearing that the city is required to conduct is what's called the special assessment hearing. And at this hearing, the city presents the costs for the project that was reviewed at the public improvement hearing back in December. So we have a series of slides here that Bill will review. There are handouts at the front of the council chambers here if you would like to see the same slides that we'll be presenting. So with that, turn it over here to Bill.
Hi, and welcome to the special assessment hearing for the 2021 street and utility improvements for City of St. Joseph. As you can see, there's multiple different areas of the project, including the Northland neighborhood, some alleys downtown, as well as 18th and 20th Avenue. Kind of getting a visual of the locations throughout the town. The Northland neighborhood includes Jasmine Lane, 3rd Avenue Northeast, Iris Lane, Hackberry Drive, 7th Avenue, Hickory Drive, and Northland. The alleys are down, can you see my cursor? No, you can't. Let's see. Is there a pointer? There we go. As you can see down here, there are the alleys downtown next to what is the baseball diamond down here. And then we also have 18th Avenue and 20th Avenue. Kind of looking a little closer into the Northland Drive, just kind of a recap of what we're doing in the area. It's going to be an edge mill and overlay with sidewalk improvements to the ADA pedestrian ramps, as well as extending the sidewalk from Hickory Drive down to First Street. Looking over at 18th Avenue and 20th Avenue. 18th Avenue is proposed to be a reconstruct, so they'll reclaim the roadway and then paving on top of it with a little bit of storm sewer improvements at the intersection of Baker Street. The project will be between Baker Street and Minnesota Street. And then also 20th Avenue, there's about half of what is shown up there is already a roadway up there, but it was annexed, it was back in the 80s, I believe. So it was annexed back then, and it is going to be improved and also extended down to the south. I don't know if any of you recall at all, but there was a water main project in this area just last year. We will be reconstructing the portion of the roadway that is there, extending it to the south, and also widening it, making it more of a through road for a future arterial. We'll also
I got a question.
Yes.
So I just need some clarification of where this, what I'm looking at right now, where is that in relation to,
Oh, sorry.
where we were, right there.
Quick Trip, Army Reserve.
So show me where Quick Trip is, or Neighbors, or,
So here's Oaks
Okay.
on 20th is right
all
here.
right, so we have two new apartment complexes down here now,
Yep.
right?
So there's the new Vista Apartments is right here. This
Which is not on the diagram, but it's there now, right?
correct. Yes.
Okay,
And then, so yeah, this is the Army facility.
thank you.
So kind of getting back into the sanitary sewer, as of right now, the sanitary sewer extends down to here on 20th Avenue. It is proposed to be extending that the rest of the way underneath the roadway. Looking into the alleys downtown, these will be a reconstruct area with water main, raw water main, which is untreated water replacement, and then also sanitary sewer replacement. There will be paved all of the alleys with exception of the south leg on block 7 will not be improved, and it is proposed to be closing off the access of the south leg of block 7 to Minnesota Street. The project final cost of the proposed construction is just over 3.5 million. As you can see, we're just shy of what was proposed at the public hearing cost of 3,519,000. Kind of breaking those costs up into project areas. As you can see, in Northland neighborhood, which is the edge mill and overlay, consists of just over $723,000 of the project cost. 18th Avenue, which is reclaim and pave, consists of almost $122,000. 28th Avenue is almost $2 million for the lengthening of the roadway, the sanitary sewer, and widening the road. And the alleys, blocks 7 and 8, consists of just over $674,000. You can see on most of the project locations have been reduced, with the exception of the alleys. The reason for the alleys costs going up were some additions of sanitary sewer to be able to serve everybody that is being served in the area right now, but to make sure that they have, proper drainage and proper connections to the city system. The information for that was actually found out after we had the preliminary public hearing for this. The project funding consists of what we're here for tonight, some special assessments, and then also the city costs. As you can see, the city is gonna be covering approximately 2/3 of the project cost at just about $2.3 million, and just over $1.2 million will be assessed to the public. Within the $1.2 million that will be assessed, the city does have properties within, let's see, it is Northland Heights area, or the Northland area, and also the downtown alleys on the blocks on block 7 and 8. The city does own parcels on those construction projects, so the city does have portions of those assessments, just like anybody else that is being assessed through the project. Also, Northland neighborhood, there's 2 streets such as Jasmine Lane and Northland Drive that are state aid eligible, and same with 18th Avenue. So the city can use some state aid funding to alleviate or to minimize the city costs for those two project areas. It has been and continues to be the policy of the city of St. Joseph that when infrastructure improvements are constructed providing benefit to a particular area, those costs shall be levied against the benefiting properties. Special assessment basis and methodology is meant to balance the equity and distribution of the special assessments. City commissioned a special assessment benefit report, which I will touch on here in a minute, of maximum levels of assessments that can be assessed to each property. The special assessment benefit report came up with these capped amounts for assessment rates. For the Northland neighborhood, for the Edgemilton overlay for residential area is $4,000 per lot. 18th Avenue for a commercial street came out to be 40 cents per square foot of each abutting lot. As you can see, for 20th Avenue, with different types of residential properties and commercial, whether if it's low, high, or medium density, the street assessment ranges between 12 to 16,000 per acre. The sanitary sewer, also with different types of property, ranges between 4 to 12,000 per acre. The downtown alleys, so block 7 and 8 alleys, also depending on the type of lot and if it's direct or indirect access to the alley, varies for a street assessment per foot of $60 to $80 per foot, and a sanitary sewer reconstruct or water main or new water main would be 4,000 per lot. The water main in the alleys that is being reconstructed, like I mentioned before, is a raw water main, so it's not finished water, so it's untreated water. So the water main that is being replaced on the alley cannot be assessed.
Just to elaborate a little bit more on that statement, the city operates, its water supply comes from several wells, groundwater wells. So we refer to water main that connects to wells as raw water main. So when Bill says that it's not finished water main, it's because it's the raw water main that goes to the water treatment plant, is filtered and processed. So there isn't a direct connection between the homes or businesses to a raw water main in this instance.
Specially assessed benefits derive from surface for street and then also for subsurface water main or sanitary sewer improvements as follows. Up to 60% of a street and utility for reconstruction costs can be assessed, and up to 100% of street costs being assessed to annexed properties with no previous assessments, such as 20th Avenue in this case, unless the council determines otherwise. Up to 100% of costs of new sanitary sewer and water main can also be assessed. For most cases, with the city subsidy coming into play, the city usually pays for about 40% at minimum. The special assessments for surface improvements are calculated on frontage, so as a per foot basis. Also, the subsurface improvements are usually calculated on either an acre or a per each or a service basis. For calculating the frontage of a lot, a regular interior lot is generally the frontage of the lot that is abutting the project. For regular rectangular corner lots, it would be 100% of the abutting short side footage and 50% of the abutting long side footage if that property has part of the project on both sides of its property. For irregular interior lots such as a pie-shaped lot, the average width of the abutting property of the abutting footage is taken. So just the frontage of, say, a pie-shaped, if it's a very small portion, is not taken. It's the average width of the property is taken into account. So jumping into the proposed final special assessment rates, as you can see for the Northland neighborhood, it was broken up into 3 different categories, depending on the width of the street. There is a 40-foot wide overlay, which consists of Northland Drive. The 36-foot wide overlay consists of Iris and Jasmine, and then the 32-foot wide overlay are the remaining streets of 7th, 3rd, Hickory, and Hackberry. If you wanna wait till we open up to the public, if that's okay? Oh, so, yeah, so I'll jump into that. So overlay is, the edge mill and overlay, what the contractor will end up doing is they'll edge mill the outer 6 feet of the roadway, so up to the gutter pan. So at the gutter pan, they'll edge mill down about an inch and taper out to nothing 6 feet away. So that way it gives us an additional room to put an additional lift of asphalt, so bituminous, on top of the existing roadway and matching into the existing gutter pan.
So a new layer of blacktop, so we refer to
Yep.
that as an overlay. So we don't take out all of the existing blacktop, we do an overlay on top of what's there. And that's purposeful because we want to maximize the life of a street. And so the additional thickness of an overlay helps us improve the longevity of the street. So when you hear overlay, think of a new layer on top of existing.
Okay, and it'll look like the existing road, not the where they put the steamroller over and it's like pretty black, it'll still be the.
No, you'll see a black new surface, so after the overlay, it's another layer of about 1.5 inches of bituminous, so the street will look brand new again after that work is complete.
Thank you.
There will be, so with the overlay, it will look like a brand new street, but the cracks after time will reflect through that 1.5 inch lift. So over time, you will be able to see the cracks that are existing out there reflect through, but this is to extend the life, like Randy said, of the life of the street. So for the alleys, block 7 and 8 alleys, as you can see, there are multiple different street assessment rates between residential and commercial and reconstruct. As you can see, the 90% and the 100% for the commercial and residential alleys, those are for portions of the alley that have not been improved previously. So those are the gravel portions of the alleys that are gonna be completely improved to a bituminous surface. And then the reconstruct alley portion at 60% rate, that is the bituminous portions of the alleys that have been improved previously and will just be reconstructed to bituminous again. There's also sanitary sewer and water main assessments. For the sanitary sewer, again, you can see there's one rate at 60% cost and one rate at 100% cost. The 60% cost is for the replacement of the existing sanitary sewer. So if you already have sanitary sewer service, you will fall under the 60% rate. If you do not, which is actually city properties, proposed to be city properties for the 100% rate, if the project goes through, would have a 100% rate at that $31,833. For the assessments, that's just for the city properties for that one. Also with the 100% water main, that is also just proposed for city properties as well. For 18th Avenue, for reconstruct, since the roadway is already paved and bituminous with utilities on it, it'll be a reconstruct at 60% cost of the reconstruction cost, being at $122.93 per foot. And 20th Avenue, with the roadway being widened out to a divided or a 3-lane roadway, and the addition of storm sewer, it will be assessed at 100% of the rate of a 32-foot wide basis. This is due to the roadway that it will be improved will be much wider than a standard roadway in the city, so it gets assessed at a standard width of a 32-foot cost. The sanitary sewer is new sanitary sewer being extended from where I showed on the map from about the south portion of the Army facility going south to where if Dale Street would come through. And that would be new sanitary sewer, so that would be assessed at 100%. And then there's also a couple of services that are being proposed that would tie into the project last year that was done in this area, which would be assessed at 100% rate. For some examples for calculating for calculating the assessment amounts, as you can see, for using just Jasmine Lane, which is a 36-foot wide mill and overlay street, assuming a property has an interior regular shaped lot with a abutting footage of 80 feet, you would take the assessment rate for a 36-foot wide overlay, which was at the 60% rate of the $24.49 times your 80-foot abutting length, leveling an assessment of $1,959. This amount, if you recall back on the benefit analysis caps, does not reach the cap amount of $4,000 per lot. So in this instance, the cap would not apply to this property because it does not exceed the $4,000 per lot. For the 18th Avenue, assuming a 1-acre lot with 150-foot frontage, is a reconstruction rate at a 60% rate of $122.93 per foot. Taking into account the 150 feet of frontage would be $18,440. Recalling once again, the assessment benefit for 18th Avenue was 40 cents per square foot was the cap of an assessment for that lot. So for a 1-acre lot of 43,560 square feet at 40 cents was a total assessment of $17,424. So that would be the cap. So looking at the previous assessment was $18,440. That being capped at the $17,424, the city will subsidize the remaining of that assessment. So the city will cover the cost of the $1,016. Going down to 20th Avenue, assuming a 10-acre commercial lot with a sanitary sewer and a water main service going into the property. For the street cost, again, keeping in mind this is the street cost of a 32-foot wide basis street, so not the full width and full construction of what is being proposed. Assuming a 500-foot frontage at $273.06, the street assessment would be approximately $136,530. Having a sewer assessment for 20th Avenue, it was best equally distributed using a per acre basis for the sanitary sewer. So assuming a 10-acre lot at $8,000 or $8,050.40 per acre would be $80,504 for the sanitary sewer assessment. And for the water main on a per each or per service basis of $16,882 for a total assessment of $233,916. Taking into account the assessment benefit cap for the street assessment in this case, it would not apply. It did not exceed the maximum capped amount for the street assessment. For the sewer, the maximum amount to be assessed on 20th Avenue for sewer service is $4,000 per acre. Taking into account the 10-acre site would be $40,000, and then taking that into account, subtracting that from reducing the $80,504 sewer assessment down to $40,000, the city would cover that extra $40,000 in the city subsidy, which would reduce the final assessment to $193,412. For the downtown, the alleys, taking into account a unimproved, so a gravel portion of the alleys, having a sanitary sewer connection, assuming a 70-foot regular interior lot, would have a 90% reconstruction assessment rate of $219.62 per that 70 feet, plus assuming there's one sanitary sewer connection at $6,563.73 for a total assessment of $21,937. Once again, the assessment benefit cap would come into play on this lot as well for both the street and the sanitary sewer. For a direct access residential lot, if you're recalling the previous table for the assessment benefit analysis, a $70 per foot cap was placed on the street assessment. So taking $70 times the 70 linear feet and then plus $4,000 per service times the one service, the assessment would be reduced down to $8,900, with the city covering almost $13,000 of the original assessment amount in the city subsidy. The special assessments may be paid in annual installments over a 10-year period with a 3% interest rate. This is to be collected with property taxes. No interest is charged if special assessments is paid within full within 30 days of the adoption of the assessment roll, which would be possibly tonight. So the 30 days would be July 7th. First installment payable on or before the first Monday in January 2022 then.
So one statement I would add about the dates that we list here, the Chapter 429 statute is very specific in terms of when and how cities establish the term for the payment of the assessment. So the 30 days referenced here in terms of to avoid interest accumulation, that's defined by statute. The same is true with respect to the first installment being due in Monday of January 22nd. So that's actually in the state statute language. That's not something that the city of St. Joseph establishes. If a community is following or levying assessments according to the 429 statute, that's prescribed in the statute.
I'd like to also say that in that 30 days, you can pay the assessment off in full, or you can make a partial payment. If you want to pay half of it now and then leave the other half over the 10-year period, you're welcome to do that. Once that 30 days is up on July 7th, if it's adopted tonight, you cannot make a partial payment anymore. Then it's pay off in full or just allow it to be paid with your property taxes. So the only time you can partially pay off is this 30-day period.
So kind of following that onto the next slide, also the interest accrues until December 31st of each year. If you pay before November 15th, let me try that again. The interest accrues up to December 31st of each year unless you pay it before November 15th. If you pay before November 15th of the preceding year, so say you pay it in 2022, the preceding year of the 2023 will not have interest on the assessments.
So I think the important date here to remember, if you are going to consider paying your assessment off at some later time, the November 15th, the reason we underline that is you avoid a second year's worth of interest. So the statute, again, the 429 statute describes or prescribes that interest is accumulated to December 31st. But the statute goes on to say you have to pay it before November 15th, or a subsequent year of interest is added to that computation. So again, not something prescribed by the city of St. Joseph, actually prescribed by the state statute. But important date there to remember if this would apply to you would be pay it before November 15th.
The assessments can be deferred if you're a military person, seniors, or disability, or have a disability. The city ordinance 38 of a homestead property with a homeowner of being 65 years older, disabled owner, or active military service, the payment constitutes unreasonable financial hardship of an assessment of over $3,000 can be deferred. The process, you would have to apply on the forms that are available at the city. complete the financial disclosure form, and the application deadline would be within 30 days of the assessment. The city council would then review these and either grant or deny the deferral request, and the interest, if the assessment is deferred, the interest on the assessment would still accrue. Kind of looking at the project schedule, as you can see, this has been around. We started with the city council receiving the feasibility report back in November. This council ordered in the improvement hearing also in November, and we conducted the public improvement hearing, which Randy mentioned earlier, back in December. The council then ordered in the preparation of the plans and specs also at that December meeting. And the council declared the costs to be assessed and set this meeting tonight back on May 17th. And the council did authorize advertisement for bids on May 24th. That brings us to tonight, the assessment hearing. And then we have a proposed bid opening date of June 29th. If the bids come in favorable that night, it will be up to the city to possibly award the contract on July 5th. Allowing construction to start either late July or early August. Hopefully finishing with a substantial completion in November, and then finalizing the project in the early summer of July 2022. Any questions?
No, nice. Now, after that, we will, unless councilors have questions, but we normally wait till. So, thank you guys. So we're gonna open a public hearing for the proposed assessments. Anyone wishing to speak for or against the proposed street utility improvements, please come to the podium, name, address. There's no particular order.
Jamie Thielen with St. Joseph Vista LLC. We have the new apartments at 345 20th Avenue Southeast. We don't have any objection at this point to our assessment. We've been notified what them out. I just did want to make a note tonight, though. We do have, as part of our development agreement, we got an opportunity to submit our cost for the private drive we put in temporarily in our development agreement up to a certain dollar amount. So we will get that in before the assessments are certified. And just one last item, and maybe it's not appropriate tonight, but at some point we did raise a question about the potential median going in front of our property. That might go in at some point. Tonight might not be the right time, but at some point we'd like to have that discussion about that median, so otherwise we don't
Randy,
have
you got
anything
that
else.
written down?
I do, and so
It's not for 2021 street utility improvements, but
so we are familiar with
Okay.
Vista's concern. If the council will recall, we built into
Yep.
the project a median opening,
Yep.
so that is
Oh, you
in the
did?
plan.
Yep.
The median
We did.
opening is in the plan.
Perfect. Yep.
all right,
Otherwise, we don't have anything else. Thank you.
thank you.
I'm Stephen May. We own the 211 West Minnesota Street on the alleys, and I was concerned with what happened up there. I think you had that up there. Why would you close one part of that alley off? I didn't follow that.
Right here, we're proposing to close off the south leg of Block 7.
Yeah,
This is mainly to to control the access onto Minnesota Street is a big portion of that. The alleys in the back, so the east and west leg of Block 7 here will be improved, so there will be access to both of these properties and any other property, I guess, from the alleys from this side. As the construction does include extending or replacing, I should say, the sanitary sewer services down this alley leg, so
yep.
this alley will be ripped up and the sanitary sewer will be replaced, but it will be put back to gravel.
So what would you do with snow removal? You're creating a dead end there. How does that operate? I don't get that. You know what I'm saying? I'm all for improvements, don't get me wrong. But I'm just saying that it looks like it's creating more of a issue for people just to drive through as a circular rather than coming in, backing up and going back out again.
So I think the discussion from at least previously from the council would have been that that would revert to essentially a private driveway, so the access would still come from the alley, but
Right.
now the north-south leg would be essentially a private driveway.
Okay.
So the maintenance, the snow plowing or the maintenance responsibility would be similar, would be your responsibility
That
in
would be
this
mine anyway,
context.
huh? So it's, the snow removal, is that gonna get pushed over the top into the ballpark? Have it drain out there, or are we just gonna shoulder it up on the sides of the alleys?
I'm not sure that I can necessarily, Ryan's
Would
not
you have
here.
anything on that, Rick, or?
Well, I would say,
It
like,
has
when
been.
I throw, again, I don't know how they clean it out today, but if I do my driveway, it goes to east and west, you know? So if
Okay.
you're maintaining it, then it's go to either side, and I don't know, I mean, we hadn't thought about pushing it down toward the ballpark, we hadn't thought about that.
When the plow comes through it, it is pushed over that.
You're talking about when the plow goes on the alley now?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know, I can't, without Ryan here to address it, I would imagine we could, you know, but I don't know.
Well, it's not taking anything off the salty streets or anything, it's kind of clean snow.
Yep.
I don't think environment, it's hurting anything.
Again, I don't know, we'd have to talk to Ryan, let's have Ryan,
Okay.
Therese, can you have Ryan address that? Like, how he's gonna manage the snow removal in the alley?
There also is a volleyball court there. So when we start digging, are we dumping black dirt on top of that sand?
no, in fact, what
No.
we are expecting that a contractor is likely gonna have to what we call backcast. They're gonna have to dig the trench and work within the alley, so we're not
Okay.
expecting that they're going to
Okay.
deposit material on the neighboring
Well, I'm
property.
just thinking if it was on there, man, it would be horrible to get it cleaned back up again. I'm just,
And if he did, the contractor would be responsible for that cleanup.
oh, okay. That's good. Another thing was, this 38, that is 65 years old, and I'm almost 65 now, but when you open up the letter and see how much you owe the city, you kind of get in the state of mind of disability. Is there any exception on that, or?
Well, the ordinance.
Not that I'm aware of, but.
I'm not sure I can comment on the birth date timing there, but,
I'll fill out the form.
Okay.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
I'm Tara Burke. I'm on the alley of West Ash, and I was just wondering if there's any possible way of, like, my neighbor and I getting that alley to be closed off. It's more of a nuisance, I guess, with the college students. We have garbage, I don't know if that's,
On the,
on West Ash behind Sal's to the post office.
Right here. You're up over in this area, right? Up on.
Yep, at the very, yep.
where do you want the bottom side closed off, or the whole alley closed off?
So I didn't know if that was like a option of the two of us.
Well, process there, correct me if I'm wrong here, but it's for the two property owners to petition the city for alley vacation. We have a process for that.
That is
No.
correct.
Yeah, so, I mean, you'd have to get a hold of City Hall here
Okay,
and get that petition format and
And
fill
then
it
just
out,
me
and
and my
then
neighbor.
present it to, come through the process here and see where it goes from there.
okay,
No promises, no,
You,
yeah.
you mean vacate it entirely, not just close it off?
Just close off, like, so I think she would have to use it still, cause the way her garage is at the end, she has a big garage that she runs her Heinkens and her other business stuff.
Yeah.
So like if, I don't know, if we have to fence both ends and then both of us can, cause I have a camper too that I use the alley, but
Yeah.
is there, I just didn't know if it was an option of, with, oh,
Let's do a hypothetical here.
Well,
Let's say they
let's-
petition the city to vacate the alley, both property owners, and the petition goes through. Okay, they would basically take ownership of that alley, but then I would assume that they would create a common drive for a driveway.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
It's
how,
We can certainly bring it up as discussion, and maybe
Yeah.
Therese and Randy, you can have that discussion with you. Again, I'm not opposed to it, I just wanna know what the repercussions might be if we did that.
So,
And-
like other alleys where we have municipal infrastructure, even if you considered vacating the alley, you would
still
end
have
up
to own it.
reserving an easement,
Right.
because we do have public utilities, so.
Yeah, and I
so-
mean, that would be fine, we could,
You couldn't
I'm
build
sure
on
with
it?
what we're being charged, it would be cheaper to put a fence up on each end and,
And that's essentially what the council would have to debate
Yeah.
in terms
Yeah.
of balancing your request as an adjacent property owner to the transportation
Yeah.
needs of,
Yeah.
of that block, for example, so.
yeah. Cause I think there's more walking and foot traffic on that alley than actual cars,
Yeah.
so.
Agree. Very good, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, I am Nicole Folkerts. I live on 210 Jasmine Lane. You guys probably have already read my objection letter that I emailed in. And I also did give Rick a petition that took me an hour to fill that out today. So I can tell you, there wasn't that many people on it. There's only 23. But it took me an hour to get 23 people to say, we hate this. We don't like it. We don't want to pay the money. The 3% interest is horrendous. People are hurting right now. This is not the perfect timing for this. Not even close. I honestly, people are getting more and more frustrated as I walked the streets. Word of mouth got out, oh, you're coming, I wanna sign it, here she comes. Like, that to me tells me that maybe your decisions in here were not in the best interests of our town. And that upsets me a little bit, because I love living here, and I love the people that live here with me. And they are just trying to get by right now. Some of these assessments, I mean, there's people paying $9 grand. $9 grand for a street that I can drive on, no issues. None. It just doesn't make any sense to me. I get it. Water sewer has trees going through it. That's an issue. That needs to be fixed. Because I don't want water in my basement or not have water come out my sink. But for instance, Jasmine Lane in Northland, that was constructed from my response that I got in my email in 2003 to 2004. I'm told it's optimal timing to do it now. So what if we don't do it now? What happens if we don't do anything to the road right now? Then what?
So the risk, in terms of the way bituminous streets age, they don't necessarily age on a straight line basis. And so when I mentioned in the email optimum timing of an overlay, the objective of doing an overlay is that we want to extend the life of the street. If the city doesn't act and doesn't overlay, then you should expect that the street would deteriorate and we would have to do a more costly reconstruction. So if you didn't like a $4,000 assessment, you're likely not going to like a $10,000 assessment if the city were to not overlay. So that is the risk, is that if they delay doing maintenance work, the street deteriorates quicker and gets to a point where an overlay is no longer an option.
Okay.
And so I
And that
mentioned, I
makes
think, in part of the response, this was originally, the city operates with a pavement maintenance plan, and they have since 2008, which lays out a fairly prescriptive approach to when certain maintenance activities occur. And if we miss the window, so to speak, then we should expect more expensive costs. And so that's what this graph here is trying to show, is that once a street starts to deteriorate, and if you let it go, it tends to fail quickly. And so
Okay.
that 15 to 20 year mark that we referenced is the typical window of when an overlay is being constructed. What you don't do, you don't overlay a street that's riddled with potholes. If you see a street that's severely cracked up, potholes, it's already too late. And so our goal with an overlay is to not let it get to that point.
Okay, so if we overlay it this year and we pay the $4 grand or the $8 grand in some cases, how long does that last?
So we would expect at least 10 years. A typical overlay will last 10 years. So as I mentioned, if we do it at year 20, our goal is to get that street to last 30, 32, sometimes 35 years. Typical street in our climate, in this area of the state, 32 to 35 years if the street is overlaid.
Okay,
If
so
the street
10
is
years.
not overlaid, you won't get to 32 or 35 years.
Okay, so if we overlay it today, we pay our fee, we get 10 more years. What happens at year 10?
So the city is, during that, so after the overlay, that doesn't mean the city stops doing maintenance. So there's other maintenance activities. I mentioned in the email, in 2015, the seal coat was one of the last major maintenance activities. So overlays, then we still resume the crack sealing routine and the seal coat. So 3 to 5 years, cities will typically crack seal again. 7 to 10 years will be another seal coat opportunity. So you kind of keep doing this recipe of seal coats, crack sealing, and in theory, with the goal, I should say, of getting to 32 to 35 years. But eventually, life, like everything, eventually street bituminous still has a life expectancy. And so after that, let's say 35 years, the city would have the option of coming through and removing all the layers of blacktop and paving 2 new layers, for example, of blacktop.
Okay, so if I'm getting this correct, we're at the 20-year mark. We pay the assessment, we do the overlay. It's gonna take 10 years before something else major needs to happen.
Mhm.
What this is laying out is it's gonna take a lot of your residents 10 years to pay it. So they're paying it for 10 years, and then you're gonna come in anyway and assess something that's probably larger
Yes.
at that point. So my question is the assessment we're paying today really worth it? Why don't we wait and just do that thing when we have the money for it?
So
in
if it's
6
2.5
years?
times more expensive in
It's
10
gonna be
years?
that in 10 years anyway, right?
Not necessarily, not necessarily.
What do you mean not necessarily? What is the possibility of that not being the case?
Mother Nature works well with us. So between the overlay, the seal coats, and the crack sealing, we have examples of streets that have got to 35 years. So I'll rephrase the question. If the
It's
city,
possible, sorry, Rand, it's possible that the road will deteriorate in 5 years, and then you're paying a larger chunk in 5 years, not 10. That you've saved $4,000 to pay 12,000 or 13,000 in 4 years or 5 years. We don't know what's gonna happen. That's the risk reward kind of theory here. That if we
Right.
do it here, we're gonna 10, 12 years. If you don't, you could be paying that larger sum in less
Sooner.
time.
sooner,
than-
yes.
Less time than 10 years. It could be 4 years or 3 years.
But hypothetically, we're gonna pay it anyway, correct?
Absolutely. And
Okay.
fiduciarily, I mean, really, our fiduciary responsibility says it's better to pay that, take the risk now and try and extend the life than to let the roads deteriorate and put a higher sum, a much larger sum on all the residents.
Okay, so the feasibility study that we had, the road, if not treated, would get to that level in 3 years, 4 years, 5 years.
Exactly. We would expect that it's gonna deteriorate quicker. And I'm not gonna try to say that it's gonna absolutely happen in 4 years or that it would absolutely in 5 years. We just know historically and from the studies that are done on the age of streets with maintenance activities versus streets without them, that we don't see a 32, 35-year life expectancy.
Okay. Because the 2015, when we did the aggregate chip seal coat, whatever that
Yep, seal coat?
technical stuff you guys talked about, I think the people that I spoke to in our neighborhood, they look at it and they say, that's held up really well.
Mhm.
They look at it and they say, you know what, I thought that happened just 2-3 years ago, not 6 years ago.
Time flies. Yeah.
It does fly, but they're looking at our road and they're comparing it to other roads in the area. They're comparing it to County Road 2. They're comparing it to other roads within St. Joe. It doesn't look any different than the rest of them that aren't having to pay this fee this year. So that's the other part that's really kind of hard on them right now, when they're gonna have to take, the majority of the people I spoke to are gonna have to pay 3% interest on something that they were not budgeting for. They had no intentions of taking out a loan for something that they're already using and don't feel the benefit of having this done. So I'm just giving you that information. The other thing is that there's a through street. You guys have explained to me it's not a through street. It doesn't meet the criteria of 2,000 plus cars that drive on this road on a given day. You also informed me that it happened, the study was back in 2017. Can you guys tell me when Jasmine Lane became all the way up the road? When did that happen?
I'm not sure I'm following the
Corey-
question.
Jasmine Lane to the east, when Corey put his new,
Oh,
the- remember that?
I do.
2018?
2016,
16?
16, I believe it was, when it was extended.
So those homes didn't technically really fill up until after your study. And I can guarantee you there's more than 370 cars that travel that road on any given day. And they're fast, and they use it. I went and looked at it. We have 46 homes on Jasmine Lane that are gonna be affected by these assessments. If we have 375 cars that go through there, that's over 8 trips every day. You can't tell me that those homes have 8 trips every day. They just don't. There's people that don't leave their houses on any certain day.
So
That's just how it works.
A typical planning number for single-family, when we're looking at trip generation, how much does single-family homes generate for traffic? 10 trips per day is a typical planning number for single-family homes. So your math isn't too far off if you're using 8, but 10 is the planning number.
Okay. I'm just saying if we redid that study, I guarantee it would be over 375.
So what she's referring to,
Did we do Count?
Jasmine
Did
Lane
we
is
do a
one of the
count?
streets that we do traffic counts because it's a state aid street. So the
Okay.
last traffic count was 2017. So every 3 years on our state aid streets,
Yeah.
3 to 4 years, the state will measure traffic counts. So we'll have another one coming up here pretty soon, to your point.
Okay.
But 2017 is the most recent period that we have actual counts for.
Okay. And the other thing that I noted is that even though it's not considered a through street, it does have high enough traffic that the city is getting reimbursement through the municipal state aid street program. Can you explain that a little bit more to me?
So the city is able to designate certain streets, typically collector streets. And I think we were not debating that Jasmine Works as a through street. We acknowledged that it does. I think our comment was, though, as the volumes that are being measured are well below what we would typically see for a collector street. So you mentioned the 2,000 vehicles per day. That's a typical threshold for a collector street. Residential streets, neighborhood residential streets, typically are 1,500 or below, is a fairly common planning number. But in this case, in Jasmine Lane and Northland Drive, they are on the city's state aid system. And so the city's able to use some of the municipal state aid funds that it receives for the state for maintenance opportunities, or maintenance activities, excuse me.
Okay, and how are those funds gonna be applied to the project for these street assessments?
So the city, if we go back to the table where the city's costs, in the event, or in the example of the Northland neighborhood, if you can you zoom in on that one by chance?
That one? Yeah.
So in the case of the city covering $437,000 of the cost for the improvement in the Northland neighborhood, the city could seek up to $437,000 of its state aid account balance to cover its share of the cost.
So the city is gonna get that for free, basically.
Well, I wouldn't say free, because it's $437,000 that the city could spend on some other street, so.
What other streets are applicable to that program?
Baker Street, Northland Drive, parts of Field Street. So generally the streets in the town that have higher volumes of traffic.
Okay. That's a very interesting point, because it's not an improvement that we want. The city gets it for free, and the residents get to pay an assessment with 3% interest. So I don't think that's gonna sit very well with your residents either.
So you are the residents. I mean,
It doesn't sit well with me, but I have a lot of people that told me otherwise, the same topic, so I'm just.
And we could put it, the MSA formula's been out there for a while. It's part of the Minnesota state funding formula. If we don't get MSA funding, then that $437 or $437,000 would be thrust to all the residents of St. Joe.
Okay.
And we'd have to bond for all that 2.29. And then everybody would be paying for it. And if it's a you know, a complete reconstruction, it would be even more than that. So MSA is really helping keep taxes down.
Okay. Alright, well, I mean, that's pretty much what I had. I know there's a lot going on up here. I just know that you have a lot of very, very upset residents right now. So please keep that in mind with your decision. I think having to take out a loan, basically, right now is unethical, really. I mean, they just can't afford an additional loan payment. They have other things going on. We all do. We all have obligations. We're trying to get out of COVID. Kids are struggling as it was this year, and we're just finally trying to get some relief. So it just seems like a really horrible timing. Really horrible timing. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Nicole.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, my name is Jacqueline Reineke Hoytje. I live at 306 Jasmine Lane. I submitted a letter late today, so I don't expect that you guys have had a full chance to read it. Solely on the basis of, not necessarily that I'm objected to the assessments. I learned so much tonight. This handout, the maps, everything was great. And I really hope that more people would have the opportunity to see that. Your letter, or the notice that we received in the mail, came out right before Memorial Day, last week of school for kids, and then it's 30 days from tonight if you guys adopt it. So my question was, are we really, if this was slated for last year, which is my understanding, there was some things in 2020 that got pushed back, why are we not standing here in March? Why weren't we not having, why did this come out with such a minimal time constraint on it? This could have been planned further, so, more people could be here, more people could understand this. So that was my request is, what I learned tonight was so helpful. But is there a reason why this wasn't perhaps brought up sooner in this format? Or is there a reason that another month, once we have this information and the layout that you guys so wonderfully did, could be provided? And then the other thing I would just like to note on there about what Nicole had said with Jasmine Lane and the traffic that goes through there. I'd like to see some safety enhancements going in there as well, whether it be signs, but there's that walking path. I live right on the walking path. It's only a matter of time before a kid gets hit. We had a dog get hit and killed there last spring. And so just really looking at, okay, how can we make that street safer? What signs are there? There's school bus stops right next to that path. That could go along with, while you're doing all this to the street, could you throw up some signs? Could you also fix the walking path? There's potholes on the walking path. So I know that's digressing a little bit, but that's all I had to say, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Oh, okay.
Hi, Craig Kern, 214 Jasmine Lane, in between those two. So she makes a great point with that walking path. They did something there last year. Again, this is off topic, but if that's the finished product, that should be an embarrassment. It was flat, and now it's like, I mean, I could have taken but they need to do something with the walking path. But to that point, with Jasmine Lane, considering that, not the criteria of a through street or whatever, I mean, you talk, Randy, about every 3 to 4 years having a study need to be done. The last I checked, we're mid-2021. If the last one was done in 17, I don't recall it being done in November. So we're overdue for that. And to Nicole's point, you're not gonna get 375 anymore. It's substantially more than that. So I would encourage any one of you to sit in a lawn chair on Jasmine Lane and watch the ridiculous traffic that comes through and with the rate of uncautiousness. So I would also ask for, make it a 20-mile-an-hour road and some speed bumps. You probably can't legitimately do that, but that road is absolutely a through street. It's more and more by the day a through street, and it needs some precaution on it if we're gonna spend some money. The other part of it is, heard a lot tonight about preventative maintenance and what we can do to prolong longevity. What is the city gonna do if we spend all this money and we assess our residents to better take care of the streets? it's a bit of an embarrassment when you go through and look at the clogged gutters along the streets, or in the winter, it doesn't get attention. It's like, that'll melt off. I mean, that road, for what it is and as much traffic as it gets, and you get a wet, heavy snow and all that traffic, packs down, and we live on moguls for the winter. So I would ask the city, what are you gonna do to take care of it a little better? That would also help, cause I do know one thing about asphalt, that'll help prolong the asphalt too, if you better take care of it. So maybe we wouldn't be sitting here today quite this soon, had that street been better taken care of by the city over the past 5-10 years. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Elaine Niehaus. I'm at 219 West Minnesota Street, so I'm an alley person. But this is all new to me, so my questions are just very simple because I'm just a newcomer here for this kind of thing here. So anyhow, I'm just kind of wondering, so I have just a single-family residential property. Is my total $4,000, or do I have to also from that back alley, because I realize that that's really an old pipe back there, so I appreciate this being done. You know, I know that needs to be replaced finally. But does that also cover it it doesn't cover it to go to my house, because I believe those are old pipes as well. So so you do have like a shut-off valve or something at that main area, so it's gonna be having to come into my property yet, and do I have to get, an estimate on that as well?
If you choose, so the work that the city performs is in the public right-of-way, so you are accurate in terms of if a property owner has an old clay building sewer from their house out to the street or to the alley, that's still their responsibility. So the scope of the city's improvements are most typically in the right-of-way, and in this case, in the blue area that you see.
So the
Now-
4,000 is just for that alley alone?
In the alley area, correct.
Do you have people lined up that we can call to get that estimate, or do I have to do that on my own, or?
So what the city can do, we don't have a contractor on board yet. So
Okay.
when Bill shared the schedule, we'll open bids June 29th, and we'll identify the potential contractor at that point. We'll share a newsletter with residents with who the slate of contractors are. You're free to talk to that contractor. There are other contractors that do building service work, that we have a list that the city maintains that we can share as well. So you're not obligated to use any one of them, nor are they obligated to necessarily do your work, for example, but we have a list of names that you could approach if you're interested in replacing your service.
So when will that get done? Where is it on your calendar for that?
In terms of the sewer work?
Yeah,
So that's actually gonna be some of the first work. So all of the buried
Okay.
utility work will be the first activities by the contractor. Now, what we can't tell you today is, once the city gets a contractor on board, where they wanna focus their work will be their discretion. We don't tell them you have to start at Block 7 on, 3rd Avenue, for example. But typically, wherever there's buried utility work, that's the first activity that they'll be working on. So there'll be more to share in terms of a schedule once we have a contractor on board, but I would expect that sometime in July or August, that's gonna be some of the first activity that we would see.
so get going with it soon for myself then. So the $4,000, is that including the, what do you call that, for me, what do you call it? It's not gravel, the other stuff, because I
The
think it's gravel.
bituminous,
right?
the
Yes.
blacktop?
Yeah, so is that the complete cost for that alley for me? $4,000, or is it in different?
Yes.
So that's the complete cost for the alley? Okay. Okay. That's all I have, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Seeing no one come forward, we're gonna close the public hearing. And I have a question kind of for Sue. Nicole presented me with this petition imposing significant cost to residents for street improvements. By signing this petition, you indicate you're objecting to these improvements and assessments in your property. Is this acceptable for objections?
If it's signed by the property owner, yes.
Okay, so there are 23 or so, and so in addition to the emails that we received as objection, those will also be registered. Counselors?
Could we have the attorney explain once they object, what the process is for the individual property owner? Just so they're clear on that.
Again, it was part of the letter, but go ahead, Sue.
Yeah, it's in the notice, in
Yeah.
order to, this is the first stage of objecting, people who have come here and filed written notices, signed. That's the first stage, and the second stage is within 30 days from the council's adoption of the assessment, you would have to serve the mayor or the city clerk with, a petition to appeal the assessment. And then within 10 days after that, you have to file that in district court. I don't believe there are court forms available, but there is a lot of information on the state of Minnesota Court's website about how to file things as a private person.
Thank you, Sue.
Well, with that, I'll move to adopt the final assessment for the 2021-030 resolution for the 2021 street and utility improvements.
Second?
Motion and second. What is the motion number? Motion and second, resolution 2021-30, adopting final assessments. Further questions or concerns? All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 7, street closure request in Lyons. So in addition to being mayor, this is my second year of I'm gonna represent the Lions tonight. You want me to stand up there?
That's, we can't do that.
Yeah, I can.
I can't. That's a conflict of interest.
I don't have to vote on it, but I can represent it.
Then out there.
Okay, no problem. Doesn't matter to me. So, so in addition to being mayor, I'm also the second year of president of St. Cloud Lions. And this year is an unusual year because the church decided not to do Joetown Rocks in the festival, and the church contracts with the St. Joseph Lions to sponsor the parade on the next day. And in this instance, since the governor restrictions were lifted effective July 1, the Lions voted outside of the church to host the parade. Unfortunately, in past years, the church has taken care of all the fees, all the coordination with police, all the coordination with public works, which is something new to the Lions. We've never had to do it before, so we submitted the request, and we've opened up registration. We have 75 registrants so far. We have, working with St. Joseph JCs, St. Joseph Y2K Lions, and the Lions, we have enough work to carry it off. The one thing we don't have is, well, and I'll go back a little bit, the church kind of sponsors us. They give us some seed money for bringing in acts and bringing in bands and anything else that we have to cover. And they cover the fees. They cover the street closure fees and event fees. So the ask here tonight is to waive the fees and to find some in-kind resources from the city for Public Works to barricade the streets, and Public Works to help with removal of some of the stuff. That's the ask. Again, there's been an outpouring of support for the parade. Yeah, Bob, I'm not gonna vote. I'm just gonna present.
I'm not even thinking about that.
Okay. So that, again,
I'm worried about it, just conflict of interest to present something for a group that you represent while you're sitting here.
yeah, no problem.
You know,
I'm standing. So
Well,
the ask is
we
to,
still need police control.
We do.
City's not gonna pay it.
I asked Lori to see if there's some costs, or what would the costs have been, that we might have paid.
We did run some estimates, and you do need post-licensed police officers at key intervals along the parade route
Okay,
to ensure the safety of, people there, people driving through. Some intersections we could do with volunteers to bring the cost down, but without volunteers, we're estimating it would be somewhere around $6,000 that we're gonna have to pay for overtime for staff, especially being it's a holiday.
Yep.
That comes into play. Volunteers, maybe we could reduce that by half or so, but,
Yeah, and I reached out already to one organization that has helped us in the past with volunteers, and because it is 4th of July weekend, there was only one interested party, and he has yet to reach out to me. So to put on a safe and effective police or parade route with police presence all the way from the St. Joe Park and Ride to the end down by Quick Trip East, we're looking at about 16 bodies, 8 of which would have to be licensed police officers. If there are not enough volunteers, the remaining 8 would have to either be police officers, Public Works, I don't know if there's fire department, but we need somebody because in the last year with COVID, we've reduced or eliminated our reserve program. We have no reserves. I can't stick them out there in uniform because we didn't want to risk our officers getting, infected by somebody else riding along. So we don't have our 9 reserve officers. They haven't trained in almost a year. So we're kind of at a hardship there. I don't have any bodies to go around, including my own staff. And I know a lot of Public Works are out of town too that weekend, so.
Hey, this year's an anomaly, I admit it. Lions weren't expecting it. We certainly don't have to host the parade. It comes down to a cost and time and effort kind of thing.
Well,
And
just
we-
as
we
Dwight
are-
said, there isn't enough bodies to police this parade. That's a
I haven't-
problem.
I haven't
That's a-
reached
That's a
out.
problem, even if the city would pay for it.
I haven't reached out to Stearns County Sheriff's Department, Wade Park Police Department, neighboring agencies to see once where they're sitting at, their comfort level is,
Yeah.
because I haven't had a request that's come formally so far, so I guess it depends on what your plans are, if I'm gonna reach out to these. So far, between my staff, Public Works, from what I've heard, they're out of town, and with this volunteer organization and our own reserves, I don't have the bodies to cover it right now, but I could sure reach out if that's the council's direction. I just don't have this money in my budget set aside.
Well, I think we're going to have a parade on July 4th. It's about time we reopen and have a parade. And this is an anomaly. I think the city should follow the Lions' lead in terms of approving the special event, the county road closure, and waive the fees. And the church, it's unfortunate that the church bailed out when they did, but they didn't know that things would open up so fast. Otherwise, we would have gone full bore on this. I think we're gonna go full bore next year. But this town, this community needs a parade. It's family friendly. The cops aren't gonna have to be arresting, people in the middle of the night that are drunk or whatever. It's a family friendly deal. And so I'd like someone to propose a motion that we accept what the Lions are asking so we can have a parade on July 4th.
There are no bodies presented, there's no security presented.
That would be my question is, do we have a deadline, or where are we at if
Yeah,
there are no
I mean,
bodies to
The
volunteer?
only thing I would suggest is reach out to the Explorers.
But you can only put explorers at certain intersections too.
Correct.
I have no problems putting them at the same intersections that we've had in the past. But, the Park and Ride, that's a dangerous and busy intersection where people will drive around without any authority and stuff. And there's certain ones that we have to have bodies. I'll be here, there's no doubt, I'll be here for that, but there's other staff that, I don't know what else we're gonna do. So I just don't know, if we're gonna have a threshold or what we're gonna have for a point of no return.
I guess I would like to see Dwight reach out and make sure we could have enough help before we say yes or no. Because if we say yes and all of a sudden there's 4 cops in town that can work, it's
I
not
wanna
gonna-
know the
it's not gonna
cost
fly.
too. I wanna know the cost. That's not, I think it's above the 6,000.
And
What
I
did you
also
think?
have a problem with setting precedents with an organization that's going to be prevalent on anything in future. So, because normally by law, once you give somebody something, you can't deny somebody else something, without being, straight across the board and fair.
Well, let's just talk about the Lions. They just recently gave the city $3,500 for new street signs. They donated 40 grand to the Millstream building. In addition, they donated land, or thought about another 10 or 12 grand for lighting and street improvements, parking improvements at Millstream. It's not like they're asking for an awful lot of money. They donate to every building and a lot of structures.
But
in
they're
this
doing
city.
that because they want to, right? They're not looking for something
Yeah.
back, are they?
What I'm
They're
saying-
doing that as a donation, right?
No.
I mean, I'm sorry, I can't, we need to know the money, we need to know logistics, and then I would have no problems, you know, looking at this again, but I can't approve, I can't feel comfortable with this. I mean, we're worrying about our money and our budget, we can't all of a sudden go, yeah, let's do that. I mean, I want specific numbers. I just think it's gonna be a heck of a lot more money from, I mean, don't get me wrong, I agree with you, Kevin. We do need some positivity here. I can't begin to tell you how much we need positivity. But at what expense? If we can't get volunteers to step up, then these volunteers, these people, we don't have it then, right? Am I,
Because how many people come into town?
it's gonna be a lot.
10,000?
Usually we've estimated closer to 20,000, but I don't know if
Okay.
this is gonna be a bigger year or less year because
I
there
think it
was
would
one not
be,
last year.
I think it would be bigger.
Yeah, I think it would be big.
Yeah.
I would like to know numbers. I would like, if you mean, I mean, I would agree. Let's see what we can find, let's see what we can do. It's not that we appreciate the Lions and everything that they do, but if they're doing it for a give back, then,
This is the
Then
first
what's
time the
the
Lions
point?
have ever asked for anything.
I
They
get
don't-
that,
they don't come
but.
here- They haven't come here in 20 years asking for anything.
But then,
They give
again, the
freely.
church should be, if that's their partner, they still should be helping them out.
The church gives them because they draw in residents, or draw in people
Right.
to their own fundraising effort.
But that's their
Again,
partner.
this is a one-off. If you don't want it, that's fine. I
Yeah.
get it.
I would like to look at numbers.
For me, it's not even the financial thing, it's, we need enough cops around. That's the biggest
Protection.
issue for me.
To me, it's setting precedents for the future.
Yeah.
How many explorers do you have, Brian?
We are currently at 26, I think.
So we'll start by tomorrow finding out if the reserves, or as your explorers can possibly be those other 8 bodies.
Okay.
And we can go that route and, you know, put our best foot forward, I guess, as long as the city, it's up to you guys what you wanna do for the costs.
I don't have a problem with the cost, so Kelly, I don't agree with you. Bob, I
That's
don't
fine.
agree with you on precedence, because this is a one-off. And I
It'll
think we
come
move
back-
forward.
It'll come back next year. It's not a one-off, in my opinion.
That's your opinion,
Right.
and I disagree.
Yeah, well,
This is not
that's fine.
setting a precedent. This
Kelly?
is
Yes,
a
it
unique
is.
What level
situation.
would you be
From my
comfortable with?
experience, it is.
I just wanna make sure we're safe, and I don't even know what kind of number. I wouldn't, I mean, if Lori, we can do it, you know? I mean, that's would be my question is, you know, is that doable? I mean,
You would have to use reserves to pay this, reserve funds that are set aside, like in the Fund 390 we talk about.
Okay.
It's not budgeted, so we would have to
Yeah.
use reserves or a cost savings from somewhere else. I don't know where that's at right today, but,
okay.
so reserves somewhere.
I'd
So
move
this
to
is a council, 2 weeks ago, the 4th of July parade was on, and 2 or 3 of you wanna basically turn it off.
No, we're not turning it off.
No,
Yeah.
I'm not turning
We
it
want-
off. I'm
we want-
turning off.
It's June
There's not
7th.
there's not enough information here. This is a open application with no answers.
There's enough
With the
information to
criteria
move
that has to
forward.
be answered before you have an application in. You present an application and that's blank, that doesn't tell you nothing.
And Kevin, if you don't have the people to block off all
I
these
get
streets,
that.
Yeah,
it's gonna be complete chaos.
and that's all in, that's all in the wind. There's no for sures on anything anymore.
No, Brian has the best point. You don't have a good point with precedence, and I don't think Kelly does on budget. I
Well,
think
that's your
Brian
opinion.
has the point.
That's your
Are
opinion.
we gonna have enough people? And that comes back to Dwight.
Kayla, when did Lions submit this?
Early last week,
Okay.
late last week, yeah.
Early last week. So there's been time to look at it. Again, I don't know what the drop dead date is to find enough, but it's been out there for more than a week.
Oh, well, if they knew this a year in advance, I mean, I would just like to see if you can get the backup and how much would that be? That's all I'm asking. I mean, I don't think that's a lot to ask.
And where it's coming from.
I do have some concerns about whether the city council can actually expend money on this, since it's a Lions project and not a chamber project. That might be, we might be running afoul of our public purpose expenditures, so we need to look at that as well.
There's another wrinkle.
No, I think we've done that before. Not that we've done it, but we've looked at some of the hindrances behind that. So,
Would there be an interest in doing a conditional approval on assuming that we can get enough law enforcement with maybe the county or area jurisdictions, and of course,
Looking into.
verifying that we can actually use it for public expenditures?
Yeah,
I'm for that.
fine with that.
I
If
am
we
fine
can
with
keep
that.
moving the ball down the field.
And I will add too, Kelly, there, in the RCA, we do have a couple estimated costs in there too of what it would be if it was a full law enforcement, or if we included the volunteers in
So
there.
that is, there wouldn't be extra than if he's saying, if we had to, they, okay. So that would be
Correct.
calling from other, okay.
Yep, that top number would be from local jurisdictions, and then the
Okay.
bottom one would be if we could secure those 8
Okay.
volunteers.
Perfect. Thank you.
Mhm.
staff got enough to go on? Okay, very good, thank you all. Item-
So did you,
So we want to move.
we do need direction.
Right.
I can't, well,
Oh, yeah. How do we say it? I'm still learning.
So I'll make
Approve on okay, thank you.
I'll make a motion to temporarily approve the parade with the contention that we can find enough law enforcement and the legal aspect of it.
I second that.
motion and second, moving forward with the said condition. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Abstained? Aye. Motion prevails 3-1-1. All right, number 8, parklet discussion.
Yeah, so, as you recall, last year, so in 2020, the city council had approved a pilot parklet program. The parklet, was proposed by, Professor Matt Lindstrom, and he led the student project as part of his urban development class. It was delayed, because there was, issues with manufacturing the base and because of COVID-19. So it was delayed until 2021. At the last council meeting, consensus and direction that was given to staff to look at options and to bring back for you all to discuss, because you were hearing comments from constituents regarding the aesthetics and some safety concerns. So we are bringing this back for you to discuss. I know one of the comments had to do with the pergola. Matt Lindstrom and his volunteers have removed that. The other item was, when it was originally approved, it was to be donated to the city. It wasn't, so in respects to liability and insurance, we do need it because the college is not interested in covering the liability. So we would need them to donate that to us, but the council would need to accept that. And assuming that you would accept that as a public parklet, then it would be covered under our insurance. So just before you tonight, just for you to discuss and provide direction on where you want to go with it. But again, it's a pilot program. It was intended to see how it goes for the 2021 season.
I don't like it. It doesn't fit. The majority of the citizenry out there that I have spoke to think it's a joke, looks like crap. Doesn't even represent what St. Joe's all about. It makes downtown look cheap. It takes away parking. That's a lot of comments there. I would like to see it removed and put it in an appropriate spot that isn't, taking up parking. It could sit in the park.
So
Yeah.
Bob, why did you approve it last year?
No, I didn't.
The council approved it last year.
Right.
And I don't disagree with you as far as how it looks. But I would say that the city council, although I wasn't on it at the time, committed to a pilot project
Mhm.
of a parklet.
may not be the design that people had hoped. But I think we owe it to the process, now that some adjustments have been made to it, that we continue the pilot program and ensure that we get enough feedback from constituents and business owners, so that we can know at the end of the summer whether or not we'd want to have something like this again next year. In the agenda packet, we have a lot of positive feedback, except one, in terms of business owners downtown that are in favor of it. And I get a mixed bag. I've talked to people randomly on the street, I've talked to people I know, and some are in favor, some are against. But despite what we might think how it looks, I think we owe it to the process to see if a parklet would be something that St. Joseph would want to have in the future years.
Well, I'm thinking they could move it across the street onto the newly.
To the church?
Well, on that side somewhere. It would take it out of the parking area, take it off of Main Street. I mean, even if this parade assumes, you're gonna have that in the way, you're gonna have 20,000 people, that's just gonna be an obstruction, for lack of another word, but,
And these were things that the city council would have anticipated last year when they approved it. The city council knew where it was gonna go. It was gonna go on Main Street. It was gonna take up 1.5
Well-
parking spots. That was all known, and the
and
city council
actually,
approved
well, like I
it.
said, I was a nay on that one. But actually, when it was first proposed and before I missed the meeting where it was voted on, but it moved
So
from.
you didn't vote on it? You didn't vote on it. You just said you opposed it, but you weren't
I
here?
did. Initially, I opposed it.
But you weren't here when it got approved?
No.
Okay, well then I don't think you have any skin in the game.
Yeah, I do.
No,
I do.
you don't.
I do. I was a naysayer, And you weren't here when we voted on it.
I know,
So
I'm
you-
looking
you-
back.
you
I
have no
wasn't
skin
around
in
and
the game.
Kelly wasn't around. I'm just
Okay,
saying what the
well,
city council
if
did
we want to
back
play
then.
word games, we'll play word games.
I'm not playing word games.
But what I'm saying is, when it was first proposed, if you let me finish, that when this was proposed by Mr. Lindstrom, I believe his name was, it was supposed to be in front of the co-op. Okay, and then the last conversation we had, they requested to move it over to, over a couple, they were gonna put in front, not next to it, by the meat market there. And then we said no. And then they proposed to put it back. Okay, they'd put it back in front of the co-op. Well, then the co-op management, not Pio Lopez, but the management said they don't want it there. And then they ended up putting it in front of the coffee shop.
Well, I'm saying this is on the city council and staff. If this thing got moved around and no one was clear and no one knew about the design, the next time, if we ever do one of these again, it's gonna be more accountability in terms of what we expect and what we end up with. Because it's loosey-goosey
How long does it get to stay there?
Yeah.
I mean,
till the end of the summer,
okay,
which there's not a definition or a date on that either.
okay.
Whenever we want it now.
Yeah, whenever we want, it's a pilot program. If there's objections, we can pull it off.
I just think 6 weeks is not long enough for a pilot program.
So there are
A lot of people don't like it, a lot of people do like it.
No, St. Joe's not a parklet community. Sorry.
My
opinion.
biggest concern that I see is who takes care of it.
Yeah.
Like who cleans up the garbage, who
Yeah, now they wanna donate
maintains
to the
it.
city, we're gonna have to store it and all that. We didn't want to at that time. That was part of the
If
conversation.
it gets donated to the city, we maintain it, we insure it for liability, and at the end of the pilot, we can do whatever the hell we want with it. We could burn it, we could store it, we can do whatever. If they donate it to us, we can decide what we wanna do with it.
Well, in my opinion, we don't want it, the city doesn't want it from the conversations back in.
Then why did the city approve it?
Because there was promises that they would take care of it, they would insure it.
All right, it's there. We
Yeah.
can't go back at this point, regardless of what actions everybody disagrees with. The two things that stand out to me are, number one, I don't think they talked to Harvey Fundenstein about where to put the location. They talked to Stacy and it ended up in front of Harvey's, which is not good. And number two, they gave us no direct way to gonna be measure it except subjective. Oh, there's a lot of people using it. Oh, there's not a lot of people using it. So, there's a lot of people using the picnic tables too. And so, I don't know how you can actually measure its success as a pilot program, except for the 6 people that are there, or the church that comes out and goes, I really don't like it. It's all subjective.
Harvey's location, with all due respect to Harvey, it's not a retail location.
It still
That's
is,
a
it's still,
meat processing plant.
still customers come and park there.
Yeah, it's still.
Customers of other businesses, but they don't go into Harvey's.
I'm pretty
They
sure they,
don't-
I'm pretty sure they can.
Yeah.
For butchering? Yeah, that's where you
If-
order.
if
That's where you
the
order the hog.
original
through the front door?
conversation
No, but you go in
was-
and order your meat in the front door. You can.
At that location on
Yes,
Minnesota
Yes,
Street.
absolutely.
Yes, we can.
Oh, I guess I'll have to take a number.
But wasn't it okay, we okayed it, how I understood it when I was reading it, was in front of the co-op.
That was an issue.
That was and the only thing that I have a problem with is that as long as I mean, I saw that they took the top off, but, it's coming into the drive, you know, so they had like, flower pots that came out a little bit farther. That made me a little nervous
Yeah.
because of cars. Otherwise, I agree with them to, oh, so sorry. Keep forgetting that. Hopefully I'm still loud enough for everybody to hear me. But that would be mine is, let's follow the pilot out, clean it up, like you had said, maybe, that's the only thing is I don't like the extended, they shouldn't go over the parking, you know what I mean? And that, those flower pots were over the park, that just made me nervous is that any car driving by could smack one of those, that's the only thing. But it is nice, I actually sat on it, I used it, so, sorry, Bob. So I'm kind of on the fence both ways.
I'm just saying it doesn't fit downtown, period.
I would say let it ride out.
Yeah.
Huh?
The rest, my opinion is let it ride out the rest of the summer.
And if we can move it back in front of the co-op or in between maybe the local blend and the co-op, I
And
don't know.
I don't,
that they can-
as, speaking for my portion of the city or my people, I don't want it. The city doesn't want it. I mean, even our maintenance staff said they didn't want to store it back then or have any part of
And we
it.
can certainly make that discussion at the end of summer. But I kind of agree, 6 weeks is not much to do a pilot. I don't think there's real objective measurable criteria you could use to whether it's used not, a lot or not. And the aesthetics still, to me, have to be improved. I would also consider that not being in front of the Minnesota Street Market and being moved and kind of half between Harvey's and Local Blend didn't get everybody's acceptance on that location. And that's a concern. So, I'm with Brian. I think we lay it out, let it play its course, and then evaluate at the end of summer what our intent is.
I do think we need some kind of process or motion whereby it gets donated to the city so that we take responsibility for it.
I disagree. I don't want it. I don't
Oh,
want
and
the-
again, I think we can make that at the end of the year. I mean, we don't need to make a motion now.
Covering it.
Yes, Sue?
The issue is that if we don't accept it, even on a temporary basis, it's not covered by the city's insurance policy.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
So the people that put it there are responsible for it, not the city.
well,
I think the
It's-
understanding was, and
Yeah.
it didn't get wrapped up because the council a year ago wasn't following through on what they should have been doing, is that they didn't accept it so that we could have our liability cover it.
Well, I believe the person, Mr. Lindstrom at that time, accepted all that responsibility of storage of
Okay, so we'll make a motion to accept it so that we can
Conversations, I would
insure it. And you're right, I thought Lindstrom was gonna cover that insurance kind of thing, but I'll make a motion to accept it so they can be covered through our liability insurance.
Second,
And motion and second, accept it for the purposes of insurability. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Motion prevails. I do say that we can still evaluate its long-term at the end of the year, when it's gonna be torn down, stored, additional liability and those kind of things. Thank you all. Anything else on this topic? Okay, very good. Item 9, engineer reports.
No additional reports this evening.
Thank you, Randy. I only have a couple of things. Since we still do not have a Park and Rec director, I have set up a couple of meetings with District 742 Community Ed for the Community Ed book that's coming out in the fall to see if we can use their gym facilities or what activities they might be have here. And there's a CSB has a new athletic director. We're gonna meet with her to see the same, if they can do some shared facilities until we move forward. And then whatever costs or programs they have in store for us, I'll bring back here and you guys can kind of kick it around. I put a note out to staff to see if there's some need. We know there was a pickleball kind of schedule that John had published, and so that's one of the things. And I took it out to the Park and Rec board, if they had some ideas what they wanted to do.
Yes, you did.
Okay,
And
okay,
I'm like,
okay.
I like what you.
Okay. So that's the only thing I have going on. This week we have APO meeting. Okay. No other reports. Item 11. So I make a motion to remove pursuant to state statute 13D05 subdivision 3C. City Council will move into a closed session to consider sale, offer, and interest of real estate owned by Riverbats Stadium.
Second.
Motion and second, moving into closed session. All those in favor signify by aye. Aye. Opposed? We're gonna move into closed session in conference room. Tell you, that HVAC engineer, how you could even put on one of those RFPs that you did this building is beyond me. I'm serious, it's 68 degrees in there and 72 and humid in here, and if you put it in my room, there's no,
I saw that, I don't.
there's no return duct in my room. So it's hot or, yeah, it's not. Yeah, I know. No, it's not. Call to order or come out of session, closed session. Item 12.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Motion and second to adjourn. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you all very much. Thank you, staff, for staying so late. It's 2 to 2 now. This guy's gonna crank one.